The air on Earth was thick, not with the crisp bite of winter or the damp promise of rain, but with smog that clung to the lungs like guilt. Elias Vega adjusted the worn hood of his coat and hunched his shoulders against the biting wind. The streets of New Damascus, once a jewel of human resilience, were now a grim tapestry of alien industry and human despair. Massive Vexus towers loomed overhead, their spires pumping toxins into the sky while shadows stretched across the crowded alleys below. Elias slipped into a side street, his boots crunching over shattered glass and debris. Around him, the whispers of humanity's decline were audible, snatches of conversation, children coughing in the cold, the occasional bark of a Dominion enforcer commanding silence. He clenched his fists inside his pockets. Not for much longer. Elias! A voice called from behind. He spun sharply, instinctively reaching for the knife hidden in his sleeve. "It's me!" hissed Mara, her breath misting in the air as she stepped out from the shadows. Mara was young, barely 20, but her eyes had seen enough suffering for a lifetime. "You're late," Elias said, his tone low but firm. She waved him off. "Had to make sure I wasn't followed. The enforcers are out in force tonight. More reason not to keep us waiting." They moved quickly, darting through back alleys until they reached an abandoned storage facility. Inside, the dim glow of an old hollow lamp illuminated a circle of figures. Elias counted 6 faces, each etched with determination. This was his team, his family in a world that had taken everything else from him. "Finally," muttered Raj, the group's resident tech specialist. "Thought the Dominion got you." "Not yet," Elias replied, shrugging off his coat and stepping into the center of the group. "Status?" Raj handed him a crudely drawn schematic. "Power relays here. Secondary coolant system feeds into it. Hit that, and the whole grid fries." Elias studied the map, nodding. "Security?" "Moderate," said Kara, a former Dominion laborer turned saboteur. "Standard patrols, but we'll have a 10-minute window before reinforcements arrive." Elias looked around the room, his voice steady but charged with purpose. "This is more than cutting power to their towers. This is a message. They've taken our homes, our people, our future. Tonight, we remind them that humanity isn't broken." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, but the tension was palpable. They had all seen what happened to rebels who were caught. Public executions designed to snuff out any spark of defiance. "Let's move," Elias said, tucking the schematic into his pocket. The relay station was perched on the edge of Sector 8, a decayed industrial zone filled with Dominion machinery. High fences crackled with energy fields, and sleek, spider-like drones patrolled the perimeter. Elias motioned for his team to fan out. They moved like shadows, sticking to the cover of derelict buildings and piles of scrap metal. Raj crouched beside Elias, pulling a small device from his pack. "Give me 30 seconds to disable the field." "Make it 20, Elias muttered, his eyes scanning the patrol routes. The device whirred softly, and the crackling hum of the energy field fizzled into silence. Elias signaled, and the team slipped through the fence, moving swiftly toward the relay. Inside, the station was eerily quiet, its halls illuminated by the cold blue glow of Dominion tech. Mara took point, her small frame perfect for slipping through tight spaces. Behind her, Elias and Kara carried small charges designed to destroy the station's coolant system. 2 guards ahead, Mara whispered, pointing to the far end of the corridor. Elias nodded to Kara, who drew a silenced pistol. A faint hiss and a muffled thud later, the guards crumpled to the floor. They reached the coolant system without further incident. Raj immediately began attaching the charges, his fingers flying over the controls. 2 minutes, he said. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the station. Elias's heart sank. "Raj," he said urgently, "what did you trip?" "Nothing. I swear." But it didn't matter. Alarms blared, and the cold blue glow of the station turned a menacing red. Footsteps pounded toward them, too many to count. "Get it done!" Elias barked, drawing his weapon. The team took defensive positions as Dominion soldiers poured into the room. Elias fired, taking down 2 soldiers before ducking behind a console. Mara darted between cover, her agility making her a difficult target. "Almost there!" Raj shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. The charges beeped, signaling they were armed. "Fall back!" Elias ordered. They fought their way out, the retreat chaotic but coordinated. Kara was hit, a grazing wound to her arm, but she waved off assistance, her jaw clenched in pain. They burst out of the station just as the charges detonated. The explosion ripped through the facility, sending a shockwave that lit up the night sky. The power grid flickered, and then the towering Dominion spires went dark. Back at the safe house, the team sat in exhausted silence. Elias cleaned his weapon, his movements methodical. "That was too close," Mara said, her voice trembling slightly. "But we did it," Raj added, his expression a mix of relief and exhaustion. "We actually did it." Elias looked around at them, his gaze steady. "This is just the beginning," he said. "They'll come down harder now, but so will we. Tonight, we showed them that humanity doesn't kneel." As the others nodded in agreement, Elias allowed himself a brief moment of hope. But in the back of his mind, he knew this was only a single battle in a much larger war. Far above them, in the Dominion's orbital command center, Archlord Carrickstall stood before a hollow display of Earth. His reptilian eyes narrowed as he studied the flickering grid. "Enough of this," he growled. "Find them. Burn them out." The rebellion had begun, and there would be no turning back. Elaborations. Elias stood in the middle of the dimly lit safe house, studying the cracked walls as though they held answers to his doubts. The explosion at the relay had bought them time, but the Dominion's retaliation was swift and brutal. Entire neighborhoods were leveled in the following days. Innocents had paid the price for the rebellion's success, and Elias couldn't shake the images of charred ruins and hollow-eyed survivors. The door creaked open behind him, and Mara stepped in, her expression tense. "Elias, they're here." He nodded and followed her to the back room, where his growing team waited. The room buzzed with low conversations and the hum of a makeshift heater. Faces turned to him as he entered, their expressions a mix of hope and fear. Some were new recruits, ordinary people hardened by loss and anger. Others were veterans of their small but determined resistance. "We've got a lead," Raj announced, tapping a datapad. The holographic display flickered, showing a Dominion supply depot on the outskirts of New Damascus. Elias crossed his arms. "What kind of lead?" "Intel from a contact in the labor camps," Raj said. "The depot's stockpiling weapons and medical supplies. If we hit it, we cripple their local operations and get the resources we desperately need." "It won't be easy," Kara interjected. Her arm was bandaged from the last mission, but her eyes burned with defiance. "That depot is crawling with guards, and they'll be expecting something after what we pulled at the relay. We can't afford to sit back," Elias said firmly. "Every day we wait, the Dominion tightens its grip. If we strike fast and hard, we'll show them they can't control us." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group, though a few remained silent. Elias scanned the room, his gaze settling on a young man at the back. Finn, a former medic, was new to the resistance. His hands fidgeted nervously, but when Elias met his eyes, he straightened his posture. "We move at dawn," Elias said. "Get some rest and prepare. This one has to count." The depot was an imposing structure surrounded by towering walls and automated turrets. Dominion guards patrolled the perimeter, their movements precise and mechanical. In the shadows of a nearby ruin, Elias and his team waited, the air heavy with tension. Raj crouched beside Elias, holding a small device. "Disabling their surveillance grid now. It'll give us about 10 minutes before they realize we're here." "Make it quick," Elias said, his voice low but steady. The team moved as one, slipping through a gap in the outer wall. Inside, the depot was a maze of crates and machinery, illuminated by harsh floodlights. Elias signaled for the group to split up. "Mara, Finn, head for the medical supplies. Raj, Kara, you're with me. We'll hit the weapons cache," Elias whispered. Stay sharp. Mara nodded, her hand resting on the knife at her belt. Finn hesitated for a moment, then followed her, clutching his pack tightly. Elias led his group deeper into the depot, the silence broken only by the hum of machinery. They reached the weapons cache, a massive storage unit filled with Dominion arms. Raj began rigging charges to the crates while Kara kept watch. Elias, Raj whispered, this haul could arm an entire district. If we can get some of it out. We don't have time. Elias cut him off. Blow it and move. Raj frowned but nodded, his hands working quickly. Across the depot, Mara and Finn moved through the shadows, their movements careful and deliberate. They found the medical supplies in a smaller storage room, but as they began loading their packs, Mara froze. Do you hear that? She whispered. Finn strained to listen. From somewhere nearby came the muffled sound of voices, human voices. Mara's eyes narrowed. Prisoners. We're supposed to grab the supplies and go, Finn said hesitantly. Mara shot him a look. We're not leaving them. She crept toward the source of the sound, finding a lock-side room filled with ragged figures, human workers forced into servitude. Their eyes widened as they saw her, hope flickering in their hollow gazes. We're getting you out, Mara whispered, pulling a small tool from her belt to pick the lock. Finn hesitated, then moved to help her. This is going to blow the timeline, he muttered. Then let's move faster, Mara shot back. Back at the weapons cache, Raj finished setting the charges. Ready to blow, he said, rising to his feet. Elias opened his mouth to respond, but a shout from behind cut him off. Dominion guards rounded the corner, their rifles raised. Get down! Elias barked, firing his weapon as the guards opened fire. The sound of gunfire echoed through the depot as the team scrambled for cover. Raj ducked behind a crate, frantically pressing the detonator. Charges armed! Hold them off! Elias shouted, his voice barely audible over the chaos. Kara picked off 2 guards with precise shots, but more poured in from the far side of the depot. Elias gritted his teeth, firing until his clip ran dry. Mara, report! He shouted into his comm. We've got a situation. Mara's voice crackled back. Prisoners. We're getting them out. Elias swore under his breath. Make it quick. We're out of time. Mara and Finn led the prisoners toward the exit, moving as quickly as they could. Dominion guards spotted them, and Mara's knife flashed as she took down one soldier in close combat. Keep moving! She yelled, covering the group as Finn guided the prisoners toward safety. Explosions rocked the depot as Raj's charges detonated, sending fire and debris into the air. The shockwave knocked Elias off his feet, but he scrambled up, dragging Kara with him. Fall back! He yelled. The team converged at the rendezvous point outside the depot. The prisoners staggered behind, some injured but alive. Mara and Finn brought up the rear, both breathing hard but unscathed. You took a risk, Elias said to Mara, his tone sharp. They're alive because of it, she shot back. Elias hesitated, then nodded. Let's move. Back at the safe house, the atmosphere was tense. The mission had succeeded, but the cost was high. Dominion forces would retaliate harder than ever. We hit them where it hurts, Raj said, his voice filled with cautious optimism. That's a win. Elias didn't respond immediately. He stared at the group, wounded but determined, and felt the weight of every decision he'd made. This isn't just about winning battles, he said finally. It's about survival. If we lose sight of that, we lose everything. Mara met his gaze, her expression defiant. And if we stop fighting, we've already lost. Elias nodded, a flicker of respect passing between them. The fire of rebellion burned brighter now, but so did the risks. The Dominion wouldn't rest until they were all ashes. As the team settled in for the night, Elias sat alone, his mind racing with plans for the war ahead. Elias sat hunched over a flickering map, its faint glow the only source of light in the cramped room. The safe house was quieter than usual. Most of the team was resting, but Elias couldn't afford the luxury. The depot raid had been a victory, but the Dominion's wrath was swift. New Damascus was on lockdown, and their patrols were relentless. Mara entered, a steaming cup of synthetic tea in her hands. She placed it on the table beside him without a word. For a moment they sat in silence, the weight of the rebellion pressing down on them. "They're scared, you know," Mara said finally. "The Dominion. Otherwise, they wouldn't be tearing the city apart looking for us." Elias exhaled slowly. "Scared or not, they'll keep coming. The depot raid wasn't enough to turn the tide. We need more than strikes. We need allies, resources, something to unify people." She leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "And what do you suggest? Walk into Dominion headquarters and ask nicely?" Elias smirked faintly but didn't respond. Instead, he tapped a spot on the map. "What's that?" Mara asked, stepping closer. "A rumor," Elias said, his tone cautious. "A Dominion transmission intercepted by one of our contacts. There's a prototype weapon being developed in Orbital Station Theta. If we take it, we cripple them," Mara finished, her eyes lighting up. Elias nodded. "And we show humanity that the Dominion isn't invincible." By morning, the plan was in motion. The team gathered in the safe house, the air electric with tension and determination. "This isn't like the depot," Elias said, addressing the group. "We're going into Dominion-controlled space. If we're caught, there won't be a trial or a prison cell waiting for us." Raj raised an eyebrow. "Encouraging. This mission isn't just about survival," Elias continued. "It's about sending a message. Humanity doesn't belong in chains. If we succeed, we'll cripple their hold on this sector." The team absorbed his words, their resolve hardening. Even Finn, who had been hesitant in the past, straightened his shoulders. "What's the plan?" Kara asked, already loading her weapon. Raj brought up a schematic of Orbital Station Theta. "It's heavily fortified, but there's a weakness. Their defense grid has a blind spot here, along the maintenance bay. We'll infiltrate through that." "And once we're inside?" Mara asked. "We locate the weapon prototype and sabotage their systems," Elias replied. "Fast, clean, and no unnecessary risks." The stolen Dominion transport ship was cramped, its interior dimly lit by red emergency lights. The hum of its engines filled the silence as the team prepared for the mission. Elias sat in the cockpit, his hands gripping the controls. "Blind spot coming up," Raj said, monitoring the radar. "We've got about 3 minutes before they detect us." Elias nodded, adjusting their course. His pulse quickened as the station came into view, a massive structure orbiting Earth, its sleek, metallic exterior bristling with weaponry. "Remember the plan," he said over his shoulder. "No heroics. We get in, do the job, and get out." "Got it," Mara replied, her voice steady. The transport slipped into the maintenance bay undetected. As the hatch opened, the team disembarked swiftly, weapons drawn. The air inside the station was cold, sterile, and oppressive. Raj pulled out a small device, tapping furiously. "Give me a minute to disable internal sensors." "Make it quick," Elias said, scanning the corridor. The lights flickered briefly, then stabilized. "We're clear, for now," Raj said, motioning for the group to move. Navigating the station was a tense game of stealth and speed. Dominion personnel moved through the corridors with precision, their presence a constant threat. The team stuck to the shadows, avoiding confrontation wherever possible. They reached the lab housing the prototype weapon. The door was sealed with a Dominion biometric lock. "Raj," Elias said, gesturing to the control panel. Raj crouched beside it, his fingers flying over the keypad. "This is some high-level encryption. Give me a sec." "You've got 30 seconds," Elias replied, his tone clipped. The lock hissed open, and the team slipped inside. The lab was a stark contrast to the rest of the station, bright, pristine, and filled with advanced technology. In the center of the room stood the prototype, a sleek, cylindrical device pulsing with energy. "What is it?" Finn asked, his voice tinged with awe. "A plasma disruptor," Raj said, his eyes wide. "If deployed, It could decimate an entire city. Can we disable it? Elias asked. Raj hesitated. I can overload the core, but it'll take time. Do it, Elias ordered. We'll hold them off. The Dominion discovered them before Raj could finish. The sound of boots echoed in the corridor, followed by the sharp bark of orders in an alien tongue. They're here! Mara shouted, taking cover behind a console. The room erupted into chaos as Dominion soldiers stormed in, their weapons firing in bursts of blue light. Elias returned fire, his shots precise and controlled. Raj, how much longer? He yelled. 2 minutes! Raj shouted back, sweat dripping down his face as he worked. Mara darted between cover, her knife flashing as she took down a soldier in close quarters. Kara provided suppressing fire, her aim deadly accurate. Finn, who had always been hesitant in combat, surprised everyone by taking a position at the doorway, firing steadily to keep the soldiers at bay. The station shook violently as the core began to overload. Done! Raj shouted. Let's move! The team raced through the corridors as alarms blared, the station's automated systems warning of imminent collapse. They reached the maintenance bay just as the transport's engines roared to life. Go, go, go! Elias shouted, ushering the team aboard. As the ship sped away from the station, they watched from the viewport as orbital station Theta erupted in a blinding explosion. The shockwave rippled outward, but the transport was already out of range. Back on Earth, the team regrouped at the safe house. The destruction of the station was a major blow to the Dominion, but the cost of the mission weighed heavily on them. We did it, Mara said, her voice a mix of triumph and exhaustion. Elias nodded, but his expression remained somber. This is just the beginning. The Dominion won't stop, and neither will we. For the first time in years, hope flickered in the eyes of everyone in the room. They had struck a blow that couldn't be ignored, and the spark of rebellion was spreading. As Elias stared out the window at the ruined cityscape, he allowed himself a brief moment of pride. Humanity had said enough, and the Dominion would soon learn what that truly meant.